what really makes us great at life and what really makes life worth living is not just infusing life with meaning, but recognizing the gratitude and the beauty in life being hard and difficult, in recognizing the victories that we have in life being hard and difficult.
Welcome to Let It Out. I'm Katie. This week on the podcast, the person who I grew up wishing would magically appear in my closet and change my life by making me over, the iconic stylist Stacy London is here. She's best known as co-host of TLC's show What Not to Wear. So maybe you, like me, grew up watching that and know her from there. Or maybe you've been following her success ever since, but she's hosted and executive produced 3 seasons of another show. She's written 2 best-selling books. She's hosted a podcast about mental health that was in collaboration with the Crisis Text Line. And most recently, last year, she became founder and CEO of State of Menopause, a holistic line for women, which addresses symptoms associated with, you guessed it, menopause and perimenopause. And while that might seem like a twist, it's really doing more of what she's been doing this entire time throughout her career, which as a stylist, and now she helps people who are struggling in some way silently to feel better and improve their self-esteem by, in this case, alleviating their external symptoms and removing the shame that surrounds them and having a conversation about menopause. She's honestly so cool. We talked about style and confidence and eating disorders and navigating career changes. And I think we talked about her finances. She gives me style advice. I learned so much about menopause and perimenopause, and I'm glad we're having this conversation here because hopefully it helps you to think about something maybe you haven't thought about before, or maybe you're in the midst of. We recorded this just last week. I was here in LA and we Zoomed. She was in New York. Without further ado, my conversation with the iconic Stacy London. Truly, thank you so much for doing this. It's so nice to meet you, and I really loved preparing for this, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about several different topics around so many different things, from style and wellness to menopause, which was really the first time I've learned about it prepping for this. And truly, this is such a thrill to have you here. So thank you for being here.
Oh my God, Katie, thank you so much. And I know that lots of people, when they are podcast hosts, will do some prep work and send some prep notes ahead of time. I've never seen notes as thorough as yours. I was like, oh my God, you do your research on your guests. Wow.
Well, oh my goodness. Well, thank you for saying that. Coming from probably the most iconic host that I know, that means so much to me. And it's funny, actually, I go to coffee with the same guys every morning. And my friend Tim, most mornings is like, who are you interviewing today? And I told him about you. And we had this nice conversation about what we were going to be talking about. And the other thing I said, I was like, well, her publicist actually asked if she could see my notes, an outline. It was so good for me because I've never had to give my notes to someone before. Still, I'm sure this is seething with typos, but usually it's crossed off and things everywhere. So no one's ever seen my notes before you.
Oh my God, that makes me sound like a real diva, but it really is only so that I can come to a podcast prepared so that I know the things that you want to talk about and reference. And I hate the idea of thinking of notes before an interview as cheating. It's always just a way for me to organize my thoughts, but not to prepare answers. I always feel like you want the conversation to be organic and for things to happen naturally. But I really believe in like understanding where your interviewer wants to take you.
And I feel the same way too, like almost like I shouldn't have notes. Like it somehow cheapens the live aspect of the conversation. But as you know, I have copious notes.
Exactly the opposite.
Yeah. Because, I know that it will, and we are right now, go off of the script, or there'll be things we don't get to, or there'll be things I really wanted to put the penny in your jukebox for you to say that you said something different. But I think often I didn't even think that it was you that wanted to see them. Sometimes publicists want to see them. Yeah. And I actually am honored that you looked. Like, I was like, oh yeah, well, she doesn't care, but I see that like the publicists probably want to make sure we cover certain things. And it's an honor that we both care enough to prepare and want to make sure that we are prepared on both ends. So it's really earnestly lovely. We have so much that I want to cover in a billion different areas, but one thing I'm dying to talk to you about is something you said in an interview years ago, actually, but it was a motto of yours that I really haven't stopped thinking about since I heard it. And it was in the context of taking anything too far. And your motto and learning lessons around that has become never trade what you want most for what you want now.
Yeah.
And
oh my God, I love that you brought up that quote.
Yeah. And you went on to say that you never get what you want most if you're constantly thinking about what you want now. And truly, Stacy, I haven't stopped thinking about that since Sunday when I heard it. So could you talk a little bit about it and how it helps you and how the context of how you learned that?
Well, it is a quote that I read somewhere years ago. There's another quote that I always have in my back pocket that I read from a horoscope that said, be beautiful enough to pity the blind beholder. And so there are certain things that just resonate with me. And that idea of don't trade what you want most for what you want now really spoke to me because I think we live in an immediate gratification kind of world. And a lot of the times, the things that are best for us, that are our highest hopes for ourselves and our loved ones and our friends and our family, are things that we are willing to trade in a moment of present weakness. And sometimes it does us a real disservice, right? It's like going on a shopping spree, and instead of buying the one perfect thing that you set out to buy, you decide it's better to buy 50 cheap things, right? Than the one thing that you really wanted and planned for and saved for. Or the idea that you want to just sleep on the couch rather than go to the gym, but you know that what you've been trying to do is strength train and build muscle and protect your bones, right? So this idea of there is always something about longevity and consistency and kind of constantly reframing and refocusing on the thing that you want most rather than the thing that's right in front of you. Sometimes the thing that's right in front of you blocks your bigger vision.
Isn't it funny how there's certain things that you read somewhere or you just that stick with you and just go right in? This was one of those for me that I think this will stick with me for a long time. And I'll think about how a behavior that feels pleasurable now could be disastrous later on. Or
think about it, like lots of quick fixes, right? I mean, people are like, oh, I hate to put it in context of like, don't eat the donut if you're trying to lose weight, because I don't believe in that. But that's the mentality. Is the sugar high really worth it if you want to keep your blood sugar stable? It's just a question of perspective. In some cases, like in terms of menopause, I'm all about the now. I'm all about what do we do in the moment to improve the quality of our life when there are a lot of symptoms that get in the way of that quality. And so that's kind of different, right? In that respect, I would say that I believe that we are trying to get you to live in the now, be in the now, accept who you are and let go and grieve who you were. But look at this as an exciting new natural transition that comes with its own host of issues and situations that you're going to kind of have to learn to navigate and control the narrative over. But that is something that you can do if you are living in the present. And certainly our products are meant to be about what can you do in the now to mitigate a symptom that is getting in the way of your day, right? Because like anything else, if we don't feel good, we can't look good. I spent my whole career as a stylist saying, look good, feel better, of course. But really, you can't feel better if you don't feel good. In menopause, with hormonal chaos being the culprit, there's a lot of things going on. There is tumult and chaos and upheaval within your hormones. And because our body is made of hormone receptors, lots of things feel different when you reach the menopause experience. And nobody told me. So, that was one reason that I felt like it was, that's an example of where I feel like the now is incredibly important, because the now and what you want most can be the same thing. And in this case, I think they have to be. In menopause, what we want most should be what we want right now. It is about reframing and reclaiming our time in the present, in middle age, and not look at it as some like draconian Middle Ages, right? What is the modern version of middle age? Because we are a different generation now that we're in our 40s and 60s than any generation before us. And I think Gen X has a huge responsibility to look at some of the things that we have been hiding or ignoring or afraid to share and be open about. I think if anything, younger generations have certainly given us permission to start dismantling some of our own patriarchal systemic beliefs.
To go back to that mantra, like most things, it's a case by case basis and situation. And I think why it landed with me so much is it's about time. There's a trade-off. And that's the part that is a challenge, is whenever we're doing anything, we're not doing something else, and there's a level of willpower with being able to choose. There are instances where the donut or the cake to celebrate something is incredibly important. And the trade-off of that is different than, when you're trying to get something done. Or I was thinking about it in terms of, we only have so much capacity and willpower to make those instant gratification choices. Of something I struggle with lately is going to bed early enough or as early as I want to. Like, I just stay up later, and that is a direct do the thing that I want to do, that is not the immediate gratification of staying up or working on this thing or whatever. So tomorrow I can be, and sometimes it's like, no, I want to stay up or whatever. So you just have to really be gentle and patient with ourselves. But it's a lot easier to make that call in the morning when I'm, have all of my willpower, than it is in the evening going to sleep when the willpower dwindles. So it's just, it really helped me. And I liked the way you articulated that.
Well, I appreciate that. I also think that just that idea of really what you're getting at, I think underneath all of that is the concept of self-awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
How aware are we? How are we meeting our own needs? And how do we be self-sufficient? How do we be, sort of self-motivated and successful in our own eyes? And I use that word very carefully, because success looks different to everybody, right? There's no value judgment that I'm really trying to attach. I think success and failure are really different words for the same thing, which is experience. But it really does come down to, like, what does work for you? What does matter more now or what you want most? And does what you want most to require more time than now? Maybe it doesn't. But the idea is that you should be able to make those distinctions. You should be able to arrive at a place at a certain time in your life. Certainly. I mean, this is one of the things I appreciate most about age, where I am self-aware about the choices that I'm making. I am self-aware when I'm like, nope, I'm treating myself to whatever, or nope, I'm working on my financial health. I'm saving right now, so I'm not going to buy those shoes. Making those choices and being aware and not beating yourself up after them, I think is really one of the most important and healthy ways for us to live and be happy.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best part of aging, is we'll be most self-aware right before we die, hopefully,
I mean,
and most experienced.
You get a few years in there of like real self-awareness before you die so you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I almost think that people conflate menopause and aging quite a bit. They are not the same thing because menopause can really happen at any stage, particularly if you have surgical or medical menopause. Those don't happen necessarily between the chronological window of 40 and 60, which is when you would come to menopause as you age. But the idea that menopause is associated with aging, I think, is because it's sort of almost like the gateway to that natural transition of our lives. And there is a lot about middle age that is difficult to process, based on sort of a whole set of patriarchal values, but really it is very difficult when you start to feel like you look different or your body is changing or suddenly your emotional life feels a little bit unstable or unmoored in some way. And you also recognize in middle age that, you're either dealing with childcare or empty nesting. On the other side of that, you've either got elder care or dying parents. And it really is a very tough and bracing realization to come to terms with the fact that you're next. And what does that mean in terms of what we're doing with our lives, right? And it would be one thing if we were dying at 60, we probably would never talk about menopause at all because who cares? You'd have menopause, you'd die. But the idea that we know now so much about health and well-being, that we know that 10,000 to 12,000 to 30,000 steps a day is great for your heart and your cognitive health and your bone health. And we know that sitting and smoking are bad. We know that drinking too much is bad. We know all of these things that have given us, sleep hygiene, exercise, nutrition. We have so much more knowledge about what is going to extend our lifespans that we really have to consider menopause to be just a natural transition, instead of this like kind of woe is me, end of life, everything is over, say goodbye to, feeling beautiful or sexual or any of the things that we should still feel at this age. We should still feel powerful. That power is going to morph into different forms. Like everything else, we evolve. So as we age, we have to just reassess and think about what that looks like for us.
I love how you talk about menopause and aging, but I want to back up a little bit for everyone listening and talk a little bit about why we're talking about menopause and how you got into doing, the work that you're doing now. Having a background in style, it's actually quite connected. And I love how you talk about the link between style and wellness. Can you talk about how you see the connection between the two?
The entire time I was on the TV show, What Not to Wear, it was really never about the clothes, right? It was about what the clothes could do. And style and television are wonderful bedmates because style is such a visual medium. And to be able to watch somebody blossom in front of you was really part of what is so magnificent about transformation. It's very visceral. You can see it, but you can feel it. And in the same way that What Not to Wear was not about clothes, I almost feel like menopause is not about the products that we use to manage it, but it is about understanding that we can have agency over this, that we can manage things that feel hard, but aren't hopeless, right? And so for me, I actually don't even think of myself anymore as a stylist. I don't even think of myself necessarily as the CEO of a company. I really consider myself to be a self-esteemist. It is my job to raise your sense of self in the midst of any crisis of confidence that you might have. And that can be through style, that can be through education, that can be through product, that can be through anything that is going to help make the standard of your life feel improved and your sense of self-esteem improve.
Yeah. And that's what I could always get from your work, even thinking back to watching you on the show or on Oprah or on the Today Show. And then more recently preparing for this, it's been you all along. You know what I mean? It really shows that. And something I wrote down from an episode back in 2016, you were talking about how comparison is the thief of confidence, self-esteem, same thing. And you gave this exercise of looking at yourself in the mirror naked, and you were giving the prompt to notice the parts that you like about yourself. And then you advised using that when you get dressed to camouflage the parts that you didn't love as much and bring attention to the parts that you did. Can you talk about that exercise and how you came up with it?
I do. In fact, I just talked about it last night at an event I was at. It's funny. I wrote about this in the first chapter of my book, The Truth About Style. And I said, one of the biggest problems I think that we have with personal style is that a lot of us have been at war with our own physicality for so long.
Yeah.
And it really is about learning to be slightly more detached from the emotions that you have about your body in order to be able to dress it really well, right? The more objective rather than subjective you can be, it makes a difference. And I'll explain that. I think that when we look at ourselves, we are usually our worst self-critics, right? And one of the things that I used to hear all the time on What Not to Wear is I hate my body, that's why I wear black. Or I think I look better in black because black is slimming. Or I wear this long sweater so you can't see my tush, right? And the funny thing is I'm like, is that what you wanted me to understand? Is that what you wanted me to think, that you wore this long sweater? So I would say, wow, what a great body you have. Because all I see is somebody trying to hide in a body they don't like. Transmission versus translation. What are you trying to say and what are you actually saying? Again, personal style is communication without having to speak. And it really is very much in your control to decide what that narrative is. And, people make decisions about you within 3 seconds. We are working with caveman prehistoric software. That's what our brains are. And we only know fight, flight, or freeze. We are going to make a judgment, not about whether you're dangerous, but whether or not we like your style, whether or not we think you're competent. Things like that will still register. We use judgment slightly differently now. It's not out of fear of our lives, but it is like, is this person somebody that I want to get to know? Is this somebody who annoys me? All of these things happen within 3 seconds. So there's a lot that you can do by paying attention to the kind of message that you're putting out even before you speak. And when I talk about standing in front of a mirror naked, you have to stand there and let all of that emotion that you feel, like whether it's sadness, joy, fury, confusion, all the things about your body that you feel, you have to stare at them. You have to stare at your body and all of your body parts until that emotion burns away, until you can utter a phrase like, I love my boobs, but I hate my tush, without being elated or in pain about it, right? Just the idea is, okay, I'm noticing. This is sort of like a meditative act, right? I'm noticing that I like my boobs, but I don't like my tush. And I want you to take that observation and say, how can I practically use that in the way that I present myself? Well, that means that I want to flatter my chest with the most flattering shape possible. But that doesn't mean that I want to hide what I don't like. I like to call it conscious camouflage. That is not anything to do with conscious uncoupling. Conscious camouflage means you know that you're trying to de-emphasize something that you don't love about your body, but it doesn't mean you're trying to hide it. It means that you really are using geometry and almost like color forms to figure out what shapes are going to be best on your body, to use them to your best advantage. So you feel confident when you walk out the door, because the great thing about style is that it is both reflective and deflective. And when you are not in a great space, use it as deflection, use it as armor, right? If you don't feel good, those are the days that I wear bright colors or prints or something to really lift myself up, lift my spirits. And that's my armor against whatever is going on in the world or in my day that does not feel good. And on the days where I feel great, then I want my fashion to reflect that, right? I want it to be a mirror of exactly what I'm feeling so that I can take that into the world. And in both ways, we're utilizing style to make our lives better, right? And to make ourselves feel comfortable and safe and beautiful in a way that has nothing to do with society's standards of any of those things, but really what we want for ourselves. What puts a kick in your step? Is it your favorite pair of jeans? Is it wearing a great platform shoe? Is it, having a cooling spray when you're having a hot flash? Is it being prepared? What does it feel like? And how do you kind of move towards that in your own life? And that you've made those decisions to kind of create the most beautiful life possible for yourself.
I had an interesting experience last week that I think is relevant, where what's great about this is that I came up with a lot of mentors in the eating disorder recovery space, right? And one of them, Isabel Foxen Duke, she would always say this thing about standards of beauty, right? Where she taught me a lot of what I know about fat politics and about, she's been on the show multiple times, but about how standards of beauty have existed for millennia, right? But the standard of beauty to include thinness or to include a body shape that whatever's in vogue this decade is new, right? It's whatever's most difficult to attain and costs the most resources to attain. It has a lot to do with capitalism. It's all these broader things. And her perspective was she's still going to participate in standards of beauty, like painting her nails or dyeing her hair, doing whatever, but she's not going to do anything self-harming anymore. And that was her getting out of her eating disorder. And that always stuck with me. And I feel like what you're talking about here isn't about like loving every aspect of your body or yourself, because that's really hard and a losing battle, because we're always going to change, or trying to fit yourself to a standard of beauty that's, yeah, exactly.
I don't even think we need to say it's as much self-harm, right? I mean, of course, something like an eating disorder, and I have been there as well when I was a young person, that self-harm is truly like either some kind of deep emotion that is trying to get out, or feelings of inadequacy and inferiority that can be so painful. One thing that I would say about that is that's very much an extreme. But even this idea of painting your nails or dyeing your hair, those are still conventions that women have been forced into. And you don't have to do those either. I think it is really deciding for yourself what that line is, because sometimes conformity just in and of itself can feel harmful. One of the regrets that I have about What Not to Wear, if I were to go back in time, or if I were to do a different kind of show, would be that I don't love the gotcha aspect of it that we had, that you were secretly nominated by friends and family, because it really was a little bit underhanded to secretly film people and then put them on the spot and say, "Are you in?"
Yeah.
It's supposed to be kind of funny and entertaining, and I get it. But the fact is, people really do struggle with a lot, and we are really our worst critics at all times. And this idea that we were sort of dictating to people what they should wear is very different than guiding somebody to their truest self. And that is not to say we did not raise people's self-esteem and confidence on the show. I believe we did. I really do. But I also think that in a lot of ways, things got repetitive because we were bound to the rules of geometry and trying to make people see their body shapes differently, or saying that one thing wasn't as flattering as another thing could be. And we wanted to be able to compare and contrast and show difference. And that was all very important. But at a certain stage, it was less about, okay, are you wearing the right size? Are you defining your waist? Are you wearing a pointy toe shoe? All of those things made sense. But I really believe what the kind of show we would need today is much more about listening to what somebody is telling us they want, listening to what their best version of themselves could look like, and helping them get there. Having much more participation and input from a guest, rather than saying, okay, here's your body type, here's what you do, here's your age, here are all the kind of discernible factors we understand about you. So here are your rules based on that. I wish that it had been much more about what would make you happiest, what would make you feel most beautiful, what would make you feel most free. That's slightly different than where we were.
What I love about that exercise, and when I brought up Isabel and the standards of beauty, like it sounds to me, or in my case, right, it's something that you have to to make it sustainable, do again and again and again over the course of your life, because our bodies change just by time and getting older. And of course, different processes that happen in the body. But I wrote this piece for Refinery 29 in 2015 about anorexia nostalgia. And it's still to this day how most people have found me and people related to. And I think even if they didn't have technically an eating disorder nostalgia, like everyone I think related to that essay, because I was writing about looking at old pictures of myself or remembering the discipline I had at a certain time, even though I knew it was fucked up and not sustainable or healthy for me mentally. But because I got a lot of compliments when I was the most sick that I was, right? Yeah. Because our society is
slightly sick.
Right, exactly. But every time I change sizes, I often feel like, oh, I just kind of got it together with my style right now. I have like my few outfits that I feel great in. And what I was going to say, the interesting experience I had last week was I'm 32 and I don't know when my mom went into menopause because she had a hysterectomy when I was really young, but my period is changing so much from, I didn't have it for about 10 years related to what I just mentioned. But now, I swear I change like a full size during the week before my period. And I got to the other end of the week after I was done bleeding, and I put on an outfit, and I felt, honestly, Stacy, and I feel like you will actually fully understand this, I felt like a completely new person being in, it's a chicken or the egg thing, being in this outfit that really suited me and I felt really good about. And I was more pleasant to be around. I was nicer to people. I was more present.
You're always more charming when you feel like you look good.
Yes. The things that usually worked for me didn't work for me. And so even doing that, it's more sustainable to be able to do that for yourself on almost a day by day basis, because our bodies aren't stagnant, and it's an exercise that, can be repeated. And you mentioned your experience with disordered eating and feeling bad about your body. And obviously, I just love that little tip you gave in passing about, wearing bright colors and big patterns when you're not feeling great about yourself. But what are some of your thoughts on using style to help feel better about negative body image days or when your body changes?
Yeah. It's essential. And in fact, last night I was even saying, it's interesting. We were talking, you just asked me about the connection between jumping from style to wellness. Style is self-care. Like, let's just be clear. Fashion and following trends, that's about an industry that's built on insecurity, right? If you don't have this, you're not in. If you don't buy this bag or have this mascara or whatever it is. But real, true personal style starts with the individual. And the idea that you are combating negative body image, it is essential, one, because you can't always trust your eyes. You can't always trust a reflection in a mirror. Right? We know that disordered eating really does change the way that you see your body, the way you see other people. It has an effect on your brain. And so it is incredibly important to stick with your body as much as possible, to understand, feel it physically, and also work with it in the most loving possible way. Style does all of that. And you can be any weight and you can still be gorgeous in your clothes. You just need to know what makes you happy and what fits you well, right? What doesn't cut off your circulation when you're sitting. These are the things that matter. And that is a real form of self-care. If you can really spend time figuring out how you want to express yourself in terms of your personal style, that goes a long way to combating negative body image. And the truth about style, I interviewed and made over 9 different women. And the first woman in the book was one who had had a severe eating disorder, very young woman who had become severely anorexic, was hospitalized, gained weight, and just did not feel beautiful anymore. Even though she was gorgeous and healthy, she just could not get past the fact that she was not, severely underweight. And we went through a whole exercise asking questions about what was the feeling that she wanted to feel again. If it wasn't about her weight, what would it be? And it was about being powerful and confident and feeling like she could walk into a room and own it. And we tried to translate that, not just through color, but through fabric and silhouette, like giving her this amazing fitted leather jacket and things that really truly felt like armor. And she looked so stunning at the end of this whole day of shooting with her that I just couldn't get over it. And even though that's not going to cure her, obviously, of like disordered eating and thinking about her body, it certainly went a long way to kind of making her see herself in a new light. And that's why it's so visceral, right? This idea that seeing is believing is really shorthand for seeing is believing, because seeing means that you can think about something differently. And if you can think about something differently, you can feel something different. And if you can feel something different, then you can believe something different. That's where faith comes from. So this idea that style can play such a visceral role in the way that we feel about ourselves is really actually quite logical.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes so much sense. And in your first book with your co-host, Clinton, it's more about the shapes and the colors and geometry,
right,
which is very important. And then your second book, your book that you just mentioned, is about the psychology of fashion. And that's so perfect about the case study that the first one in your book is about. And it goes well with something I always say to people in eating disorder recovery is like, throw away anything from that time, like give it away, donate it, because having it really triggers that anorexia nostalgia. And since I don't weigh myself and I don't look at any other markers, how our clothes fit for many of us is
the only way.
Yeah. And so it's hard to put something on and it be tighter than it normally is, and you really loved it and you really remembered a good day in it or something. It's jarring. Even if you're not judging yourself, even if you're like perfectly recovered and you're not, or just don't have any body image issues, like it's jarring for anyone when something that used to fit doesn't anymore.
It's one thing if, let's say you have PMS and you're bloating and you have a heavy period or something like that, that's different. But this idea that we hold on to a lot of things that, there's the 80-20 rule about closets, right? That frankly, most of the time we wear 20% of our closet 80% of the time, and 80% of our closet we wear 20% of the time. So mostly the things that we don't wear are things that we either don't really need, don't know how to wear, or are holding on to out of some kind of nostalgia of what we used to look like in them, or some kind of hope that in the future will fit into them, right? But all of those things are psychological torture. And at any stage, whether or not you have been dealing with an eating disorder or not, at any point in your life, any clothes that you are holding on to that do not really fit you, that are not, due to a week of bloating or something like that, but really you haven't worn in a year, or you're waiting until you lose that 10 pounds or gain that 10 pounds, all of that is psychological torture. All of those are demons in your closet, and your closet should be a place of joy. So I am telling you, I will tell you right now, get rid of everything. The most that I would ever say to hold on to in terms of that kind of either nostalgic or hopeful clothing is 1 to 3 pieces if you are actively working to get to the place where you can wear them, because then they can become motivators. Otherwise, they're just torture symbols. And you do not need any more psychological torture than you have to endure on a daily basis anyway, right? Yeah. We've got noise pollution, we've got climate change, some of us have shitty bosses. There's a lot going on in the world. We need to make life as lovely and beautiful for ourselves as we can. And holding on to things that no longer serve you is not a way to do that.
The thing that comes up for me so much in getting dressed, and which is challenging, is choice. We have so many choices that we have to make now. One question I have for you about style before we move on to what you're doing now, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this a little bit, but when it comes to dressing for a certain age, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this now, and if they've evolved or where you are with this, because like I said, I'm in my early 30s, and even just every morning when I leave, I kind of wear a uniform, and I've always kind of been like this. And I used to think it was like, just, I don't feel comfortable in my body or whatever, but like, no matter what size I'm at, and trust me, I've been at so many different ones, I find like the same 4 things and buy them in a bunch of colors and kind of wear those. And that's what I do. But I feel like I'm at this place where I could kind of dress like I'm in high school or like I'm a grandma, and anywhere in between is what I see with my neighborhood and my peers. And I'm curious your thoughts on that, and how fits into that, and how trends fit into that. And yeah, just where your thinking is around that.
Well, I definitely think that my thinking has evolved a lot, because we had a sign on What Not to Wear that said no mini skirts over 35, which I don't believe at all anymore. But it was certainly, like everybody loved a hard and fast rule back in the early aughts. So I guess that's more what we were after. But, I don't really think so much about age, right? In terms of style. Fit is paramount. That is the most paramount thing when it comes to style. Fit is essential. The better something fits you, the more it's going to look like it was made for you, right? So even things that are inexpensive, have them tailored, because that will wind up probably being less expensive than something really expensive, and yet it will still look great, right? I always say spend as much as you can actually afford on your clothes. Spend as much as you can. And if that means that all you're buying is like great stuff from Target and TJ Maxx, so be it. But just make sure that it's tailored to look like, it was literally made for you. That is, for me, the most important thing. The second most important thing is, what do you want your style to be? What is your deep longing for the way that you want to look like? When you tell me that you basically have a uniform and you buy things in multiples, that's fine if those multiples are things that you love, like they're 4 yummy sweaters that feel so soft and they come in gorgeous colors. And so you don't mind having 4 of them. If you're buying things because you don't know what your style is, or you're afraid to experiment with style, or you think that you don't have the right body for something, then I think you're limiting yourself. Then I think you need to kind of go off and be courageous and go try on crazy things. You don't have to buy them. You just have to push yourself to see that you can do it. And you may find that you actually wind up loving some things more than what you've been doing. I also think at 32, look, you're very young. It's almost like 32 is a new phase in and of itself. Your 30s are such a great decade, but it is a real decade of like transformation and evolution. And so where you are now is probably not where you're going to be at 42 or 52. But it means that the best version of the style you're going to have at any age is because you are listening to what you really want. And it does take work. It takes work to be quiet enough to listen and really think, like, am I buying things out of habit, or am I buying things out of joy? Am I buying things that are baggy because I don't want to show my body, or am I making the effort to have clothes fit me well? These are all things that you have to think about. And sometimes, look, you may be like, yeah, I'm wearing oversized clothes. I don't like the way I look, and I don't want to deal with it. That is fine. But remember that you are controlling that narrative. And if you are dressing in a way that you are trying to hide yourself because you don't feel good about yourself, you aren't going to fool anybody if you're just wearing, let's say, oversized clothes in black, right? People are going to know that that's what you're trying to do. Now, you may not care about that, but I'm just saying you need to be aware of what is going on around you. We do not live in a vacuum. There will always be other people that you want to interact with. We all want to be praised and valued and complimented and loved. And how we take care of ourselves and how we present to the world is a part of that, whether we want it to be or not. I didn't make the rules. I want you to win the game.
I'm interrupting this episode briefly to tell you a little bit more about In Process, because I'm honestly stoked about it. It's a experiential workshop, a study in what it means to live creatively. What is a creative life? I don't know, but we are going to define it together in this for each of us and hold each other accountable for living it in the way that feels good. It's part class, it's part supportive group, it's part open studio or office hours where we co-work together, because I perpetually felt disorganized and overwhelmed and creatively frustrated because I was trying to do so much and not really doing anything at all. My list of ideas grew, and I rarely felt the satisfaction of completing any one of them, completing a project. So in 2020, this was my solution to give myself and others accountability and support while we're in process, moving through our projects and personally moving through whatever comes up. I believe our feelings inform our actions, and then our actions inform, what our life becomes. And this is a place for us to hopefully, with the help of the group, feel better. And I think when we can feel a little bit better, we'll take action in the direction that we want to go, and we'll define that here together. And it's been incredibly useful to me. And I think we're meant to be in community. So this is really for anyone who wants to feel more connected and less alone, maybe have some more direction and feel a sense of completion and something that we'll define together. The theme this time is focus. This group began in 2020 as a way for me to connect with other people while working and making things separately. We could be together and give each other a little bit of structure within the solitude of making projects. And it morphed to be less about creative projects and more general personal growing and navigating transitions or learning new skills. And you can be someone who works a full-time job or someone who freelances. Many people do both, or, like me, have several jobs. We've had a winemaker, painters, someone who worked in human resources. We've had several chefs, several musicians. We had a middle school teacher, a screenwriter. Oh, wow. We had parents of young children. We've had parents of grown children. We've had a mother-daughter pair. That was really cool. Many, many more. If you have a question on whether this would be fun for you, just let me know. Send me an email. The archive has conversations with guests here who taught lessons, like actress Andre Vermeulen, architect and interior designer Angie Choi, who teaches about creativity in spaces and clearing space for creativity and feng shui for creativity. We have Jezebel DuPont come in and talk about files and notes on your phone and your inbox. And that was one of my favorite classes. And Heidi, the designer and founder of Ozma of California, she teaches a class. Christine, Maddie, Phoebe, my friend Simi. It's a party in there. This week's episode is brought to you by Sprout Living. If you aren't already familiar with Sprout, I have to tell you about their amazing plant-based protein powders. As you probably know, I'm, pretty active. I walk a decent amount and kind of known as a pedestrian, and their products really help me to keep walking. Their blends are delicious and they really use quality ingredients. No claims that they're quality. They truly are third-party tested, and what makes them different is that they avoid a lot of unnecessary additives. That's like gums and thickeners, and it's really great. They only use powerful superfoods and adaptogens and nootropics, which is great because their blends are then multifunctional. So more than just protein powder, this results in more convenience, it's cost saving, and of course it's less waste. And their Epic Protein Collagen Blend, for example, contains all these ingredients that boost the body's natural production of collagen, and it tastes so good. There's a mindful matcha blend that I particularly like, and that's of course great for energy and clarity and memory and focus. I really love it. It tastes so good. You can taste that they really care. There's no gross aftertaste from a sweetener that might make you feel weird, bloated. I really love it, and I think you will too. Organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free, and most importantly, third-party tested. When it comes to something that you're having every day, sometimes maybe more than once a day perhaps, you want it to be something that you picked on purpose and that you're consuming something that you really love. And that's exactly what Sprout Living products do. I've honestly never seen such consideration and attention to quality like I do with these, which is why I feel confident about recommending it to you. They have a bunch of different flavors, and I'm sure you'll find something that you like. I did. Again, I love the matcha one. There's a coffee blend that's really good, a chocolate maca that tastes like a chocolate milkshake. Check them out. Use the code LETITOUT for 20% off your order. Again, that code is LETITOUT for 20% off your order. Thank you so much, Sprout. Oh, I just love you so much. One of the things I love about you and admire is your ability to evolve, like you just said, with your thinking and grow and try things. And in general and personally and professionally, you became a CEO at 51. And I really want to talk about that. And I want to talk more about State of Menopause, but just that fact alone. And I'm really inspired by timelines and different people's timelines and shifting our cultural thinking, to your point about the decade that I'm in. And, I entered my 30s April of the pandemic. Keep making the joke, like I'm doing really great for like a 25-year-old. I live in a studio apartment. I'm single and I have friends in all different decades. And
but you're doing well.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing well for you. This idea of like you're doing well for being 25, that's funny, but it's also not true. I mean, here you are with this amazing podcast with already a lifetime of experience that has brought you to this point. And that is something to be celebrated. There is always something to be celebrated. This idea that we have, which is such a Western kind of capitalist notion that everything is always supposed to be great. We're always going to be successful. We deserve to be happy at all times, is literally the opposite of what life is, right? Any Buddhist, any Taoist will tell you that life is suffering. Life is hard. It's funny that we think that we deserve for it to be easy at all times. But the fact is, what really makes us great at life and what really makes life worth living is not just infusing life with meaning, but recognizing the gratitude and the beauty in life being hard and difficult, in recognizing the victories that we have in life being hard and difficult. Being happy and content is really about making peace with life being hard and difficult. I'm not reprimanding you, but I do want to encourage you to just think about that a little bit differently, because you're exactly where you need to be.
Thank you. Well, that was my point with all of this, is just that time really doesn't matter. And 30 under 30, you're like, there's still these things that celebrate youth. Seeing you become a CEO for the first time at 51, like that is expansive for me. And that is really helpful. And I really am inspired right now by women and people of all genders doing things at different timelines.
I think there are a couple of things to say about that. One, I think on a sociobiological level, we are always going to prize youth, right? Youth equals fertility. And fertility means the extenuation, is that a word? Of the race, right? The continuation and extension of the human race. So that is built in for a reason, right? We find youth attractive because we constantly want to procreate. We want more humans to exist and evolve over time. That's the first thing. What I don't think is that we have to value it at the exclusion of every other life stage. And I also think that this idea that it's so revolutionary for a 51-year-old to have pivoted from one career to another really shouldn't be, because I'm not going to die at 55. I mean, knock on wood, right? Hoping there's no natural disaster or anything. But this idea that I can live well into my 90s means that I've got almost half of my lifetime still in front of me. To limit myself to the thinking that I give up because I've hit menopause, no longer going to have any biological children. What? That means it's over for me? I mean, that would mean that no woman who has stopped menstruating has anything valuable to contribute to our society. And you can look around and see some pretty amazing women doing valuable things after menopause. I used to say I didn't think the playing field would ever be leveled until men could give birth. Now, and that may happen at some point, right? I know that there are medical studies where they're looking at the possibility of uterine implants for trans women. So these are things that may actually one day be possible. But until then, the playing field isn't level. We are always cast because of our reproductive organs and our reproductive processes. We're always put in a difficult position, right? Getting your period is this rite of passage. Congratulations, you're a woman. It's also the beginning of sexuality, right? It's also the beginning of what comes from sexuality, which for women is objectification. What if we thought about menopause not as just this natural transition where your biologically fertile years end, but it becomes about a reclamation of self, a reclamation of self-actualization instead of objectification, that it can still be this amazing period of growth and evolution if we looked at it a little bit differently. And again, this is about minute perspective shifts. This is not huge otherworld thinking. This is just slight perspective shifts. And this idea that we don't have anything to offer after a certain age is ludicrous. The other thing that I was going to say to you, there's this great quote, right? Out of